Introduction. In the quiet and unassuming town of Oakville, nestled amidst rolling hills and picturesque landscapes, a profoundly tragic tale unfolded, a courtroom drama that shook the very foundations of this close-knit community. As the town's clock tower chimed with the dawn of a new day, no one could have foreseen the heart-wrenching events that would soon transpire within the somber walls of the Oakville Courthouse. Oakville had always been a place where neighbors knew one another's names, where trust was a currency, and where the fabric of society was woven together by shared hopes, dreams, and the comfort of familiar faces. It was a town where, for generations, the courthouse served as the sacred arbiter of justice, a place of resolve and reparation, where conflicts found their peaceful resolution, and wrongdoing was met with fair judgment. On this fateful day, the sun cast long shadows over Oakville, bringing with it an unspoken sense of unease, as the townsfolk gathered at the courthouse, whispering anxiously among themselves. The trial of Dr. John Mitchell, a respected physician, stood as the fulcrum upon which their community's faith in justice teetered. Accused of medical malpractice, Dr. Mitchell was a man of renowned reputation, whose healing hands had touched the lives of countless Oakville residents. The gravity of the trial hung heavy in the air, as the townspeople awaited the revelation of truth. As the courtroom filled to capacity, diverse emotions simmered within the hearts of those who had come to bear witness. Sympathy for the alleged victims mingled with lingering trust in the man they had once revered. The trial of Dr. Mitchell was not just a legal proceeding, it was an ordeal that would test the very foundation of trust, not only in a physician but also in the mechanisms of justice itself. In the ensuing chapters of this real-life courtroom tragedy, the multifaceted tale of the gavel's grief unfolds. It delves into the intricacies of the prosecution's case, where attorney Sarah Anderson resolutely presented a formidable array of evidence, turning a once-beloved doctor into a symbol of potential negligence. With each testimony, the courtroom bore witness to heart-wrenching tales of suffering and despair. Yet, the defense, led by the unwavering Daniel Roberts, painted a different picture, one that portrayed the pressures and challenges of the medical profession. Expert witnesses attested to the complexities that doctors faced daily, raising questions about the blurred line between human error and professional misconduct. In this courtroom, the community grappled with a profound moral dilemma, forcing them to confront the shades of gray in a world they had previously perceived as black and white. Through the unfolding chapters, readers will journey through the emotional highs and lows of the trial, as well as the impact it had on the lives of the townspeople. The final verdict, delivered with solemnity, etched the fate of Dr. Mitchell, leaving a profound impact on Oakville's collective conscience. As the story unfolds, it raises poignant questions about the limitations of justice and the undeniable vulnerability of the human condition. Amidst the sorrow and despair, amidst the shattered trust and broken lives, the gavel's grief stands as a powerful testament to the intricate and often painful dance between justice and the human spirit. In the aftermath, the denizens of Oakville will forever be haunted by the haunting echoes of a trial that changed their lives and their town, and made them reflect upon the fragility of trust and the profound impact of courtroom decisions on the tapestry of everyday existence.
Chapter 1: A Fateful Day. The sun had just begun to ascend above the hills, casting a soft, golden hue over the picturesque town of Oakville. Its cobblestone streets and quaint houses seemed untouched by time, a place where the past coexisted harmoniously with the present. The courthouse, an imposing stone structure with ivy-clad walls and a clock tower that had faithfully kept time for generations, stood as the town's sentinel of justice. It had witnessed countless trials, both grand and mundane, but none quite as fateful as the one about to unfold on this particular morning. As the residents of Oakville gathered at the courthouse's entrance, a palpable tension enveloped the crowd. The townsfolk, whose lives were deeply interwoven, had come together not as mere spectators but as active participants in the solemn drama that was about to take place. The trial of Dr. John Mitchell, a highly respected physician, was an event that had sent shockwaves through the community. Dr. Mitchell had been the town's trusted healer for decades. His hands, once the embodiment of solace and hope, had delivered countless Oakville residents from the throes of illness. Generations of families had turned to him for care, guidance, and the assurance that they would be met with compassion and expertise. He was a fixture in their lives, a man who had woven himself into the very fabric of the town's identity. But now, on this fateful day, the man who had held their trust stood accused of a grave offense, medical malpractice. The very notion of such an allegation against a figure so deeply cherished was almost too much for the community to bear. As the townspeople entered the courthouse, the air seemed to thicken with unresolved questions and an unsettling sense of dread. The courtroom itself was a scene of poignant contrasts. The polished oak benches that had once offered comfort to the weary were now occupied by an array of anxious faces. Gossamer beams of sunlight filtered through the high, arched windows, casting long shadows over the rows of spectators. Whispers of speculation rustled like fallen leaves on a crisp autumn day, creating a murmur that underscored the gravity of the moment. In one corner of the courtroom, the prosecution team, led by the formidable attorney Sarah Anderson, had assembled an arsenal of evidence to lay bare the alleged misdeeds of Dr. Mitchell. The families of those who had suffered under his care had taken their seats, their faces etched with anguish and a thirst for justice. On the opposite side of the courtroom, Dr. Mitchell, flanked by his defense attorney, Daniel Roberts, appeared calm and composed, though his eyes betrayed the weight of the accusations that hung over him. His reputation was now on trial, a reputation that had been painstakingly cultivated over the years and had, until now, been unquestioned. As the gavel was raised, the courtroom descended into an anticipatory silence, with the townspeople aware that the unfolding proceedings would test the limits of their faith, their trust, and their very understanding of justice. The trial of Dr. John Mitchell had begun, and the town of Oakville would never be the same again.
Chapter 2: The Prosecutions Case. Inside the hallowed walls of the Oakville Courthouse, Chapter 2 of The Gavel's Grief unfolded with an air of anticipation and unease. Attorney Sarah Anderson, the embodiment of determination and resolve, took center stage as she meticulously laid out the prosecution's case against Dr. John Mitchell, the beloved physician now facing allegations of medical malpractice. Sarah's opening statements were compelling, her words laced with empathy for the victims, and a determination to reveal the truth. She painted a vivid picture of the suffering that had befallen those who had entrusted their well-being to Dr. Mitchell. The courtroom listened intently, her words searing into their consciousness. The heart-wrenching testimonies of former patients who had been under Dr. Mitchell's care served as a stark contrast to the town's once-held reverence for the doctor. Emily Thompson, a young woman whose sight had been irrevocably stolen by a misdiagnosis, recounted her journey from a vibrant teenager to a blind and dependent soul. Her testimony was a pivotal moment in the trial, evoking tears and gasps from the spectators. Sarah Anderson introduced a trail of evidence that meticulously unraveled Dr. Mitchell's reputation as a healer. Medical records, expert witnesses, and documented instances of alleged negligence cast a dark shadow over the physician's once pristine image. Each piece of evidence was like a brick in the wall of doubt that was being meticulously constructed. The gravity of the situation was inescapable. The townsfolk, who had long considered Dr. Mitchell a beacon of hope and healing, were now faced with a stark reality. The courtroom, once a symbol of justice and resolution, had become a stage where trust and faith were tested to their limits. As the prosecution's case unfolded, it became increasingly difficult for those who had sat in Dr. Mitchell's corner to reconcile their admiration for the man with the mounting evidence against him. It was a moral quagmire, a choice between loyalty and justice, and for the residents of Oakville, the verdict of their hearts was far from unanimous. The conclusion of Chapter 2 left the courtroom simmering with emotion. The prosecution had made a compelling case, and the weight of the evidence was undeniable. Dr. John Mitchell's reputation lay in tatters, and the townspeople were left grappling with a deep sense of loss and betrayal. As the gavel's grief journeyed forward, the town of Oakville would find itself at the crossroads of trust and truth, and the ultimate decision would not only shape the fate of one man but also the collective conscience of an entire community.
Chapter 3: The Defense's Stand. Amidst the gripping drama that had unfolded within the courtroom's hallowed halls, the Oakville Courthouse once again became the stage for a riveting performance. In Chapter 3 of The Gavel's Grief, the defense team led by attorney Daniel Roberts took center stage, seeking to redeem the reputation of Dr. John Mitchell. With an air of unwavering determination, Daniel Roberts presented his opening statements. His words echoed with the conviction that Dr. Mitchell was a physician who had dedicated his life to the well-being of the townspeople. Roberts argued that medicine, with its complexities and uncertainties, was a noble profession that often forced practitioners into making life-altering decisions in the blink of an eye. He stressed that these decisions, while well-intentioned, could lead to unfortunate outcomes, which were not necessarily indicative of malice. Expert witnesses took the stand, offering insights into the intricate nature of the medical field. They expounded on the inherent risks of medical practice, the ever-present possibility of misdiagnosis, and the uncertainties that shadowed every doctor's judgment. The defense contended that while the mistakes may have occurred, they were not indicative of willful negligence. Amid the unfolding testimony, the townsfolk grappled with their emotions. They remembered the countless times Dr. Mitchell had brought comfort and healing to their lives, and the conflicting narratives presented in the courtroom left them torn between loyalty and a growing doubt. The courtroom itself became a battleground of clashing beliefs, as the defense team skillfully introduced a layer of complexity to the trial. For the townspeople who had gathered in the courthouse, the case became a moral dilemma, an internal struggle between the cherished image of a trusted physician and the compelling arguments laid out by the defense. Could a single mistake overshadow years of dedicated service, they wondered, or was there a deeper understanding of the sacrifices and challenges faced by those in the medical profession? As the defense presented its case, the trial continued to peel back layers of complexity. Dr. John Mitchell, once seen as the embodiment of healing, now sat at the center of a moral and legal storm, while Oakville stood at the precipice of a profound reckoning. In the chapters to come, the courtroom would bear witness to a battle between trust and doubt, faith and reason, as the town of Oakville sought to navigate the stormy seas of a trial that would forever alter the course of their lives.
Chapter 4: Unraveling Truth. As The Gavel's Grief progressed into Chapter 4, the Oakville Courthouse continued to be the epicenter of a heart-wrenching saga that tested the community's faith in their beloved physician, Dr. John Mitchell, and the very foundations of justice. This chapter focused on the unraveling of the truth, as the trial's intricate narrative deepened. The courtroom's atmosphere had grown even more charged, the anticipation almost unbearable. The jury, the townsfolk, and even the families of the alleged victims were hanging on every word and piece of evidence presented. As the trial unfolded, the veil that had shrouded Dr. Mitchell's reputation began to fray. Both the prosecution and the defense teams continued to build their respective arguments, skillfully examining every facet of the case. The townspeople found themselves swaying between their lingering trust in the physician and the mounting evidence of his alleged wrongdoing. One by one, former patients and medical experts took the stand. Their testimonies unraveled the intricacies of the medical world and the consequences of misjudgments. The courtroom was immersed in a sea of emotional narratives and clinical explanations, as the jury and spectators were forced to confront the fine line between medical errors and negligence. Emily Thompson's story, in particular, continued to haunt the courtroom. Her emotional testimony, recalling the loss of her sight due to a misdiagnosis, had left an indelible mark. The courtroom was not immune to her pain. Many wept for her lost innocence and the life she could never regain. The townspeople, each grappling with their own inner turmoil, began to question the delicate balance between trust and accountability. Could one error in judgment erase years of service? Was the doctor they had relied on for so long truly at fault, or were they watching an unfortunate confluence of circumstances play out in the courtroom? Chapter 4 concluded with the Oakville community left in a state of profound reflection. The courtroom had become a crucible for the town's collective soul, as the intricate web of truth, loyalty, and doubt became ever more entangled. The trial had not only put Dr. John Mitchell's fate in the balance, but had also cast an unyielding spotlight on the complexities of trust, accountability, and the fine line between innocence and guilt. In the chapters that followed, the community would face an inexorable reckoning with the very essence of justice and the relentless pursuit of the truth.
Chapter 5: Emily's painful revelation. In Chapter 5 of The Gavel's Grief, the Oakville Courthouse became a stage for one of the most heart-wrenching and pivotal moments of the trial. The atmosphere was laden with emotion as Emily Thompson, a young woman who had suffered a life-altering misdiagnosis, took the stand to share her devastating story. Emily was a familiar face in Oakville, once a lively and bright teenager who had seemingly endless potential. As she began to recount her painful journey, her voice trembled with a mix of sorrow and frustration. She described how, under Dr. John Mitchell's care, her world had shifted from one filled with boundless opportunities to a dark, unending night. Her testimony was a deeply moving narrative that resonated with everyone present. The courtroom was engulfed in a heavy silence as Emily's story unfolded. Her descriptions of the confusion, the fear, and the ultimate despair she had experienced in the wake of her misdiagnosis were painfully vivid. The townspeople, who had once believed in Dr. Mitchell's infallibility, could not ignore the harsh reality that one young woman had endured, seemingly due to his alleged negligence. As Emily continued, the gravity of the situation weighed on the courtroom. Her loss was not only the loss of sight but the loss of a future she had once taken for granted. Her independence had been shattered, and her dreams had been crushed by the very hands they had so ardently trusted. Tears welled in the eyes of spectators, and it was impossible to remain untouched by her testimony. Dr. Mitchell, who had maintained a stoic presence throughout the trial, appeared genuinely shaken by Emily's revelation. He had never met her before this trial, and her story was an unexpected and heartbreaking revelation. The trial had taken on a new dimension, transcending the realm of medical jargon and legal arguments to confront the raw, human consequences of alleged negligence. Chapter 5 served as a turning point in the trial, marking a profound shift in public sentiment. Emily's testimony was a powerful reminder of the lives that hung in the balance, the pain endured, and the consequences that could not be undone. As the gavel struck, and Chapter 5 came to a close, the Oakville community found themselves at a crossroads. The trial was no longer just about Dr. John Mitchell's guilt or innocence, it was about their own trust and faith, forever altered by the painful revelation of a young woman who had lost her sight, and the profound implications of medical errors on their lives.
Chapter 6, The Verdict. In the hushed and anxious atmosphere of the Oakville Courthouse, Chapter 6 of The Gavel's Grief played out as a pivotal moment that would forever alter the course of the trial. The fate of Dr. John Mitchell hung in the balance, as the jury, after days of emotional testimony and legal arguments, finally reached a verdict. The courtroom was packed to capacity, and the townsfolk, many of whom had been following the trial from its very inception, were gripped by a sense of anticipation mixed with trepidation. Emily's heartbreaking testimony had left an indelible mark, casting a long shadow over the proceedings. As the jury filed back into the courtroom, the air was charged with tension. Their faces betrayed the weight of their responsibility. The moment arrived when the foreperson, a solemn figure with a daunting task, stood to deliver the verdict. In the case of Dr. John Mitchell, the foreperson began, their voice steady,
the jury finds the defendant guilty of medical malpractice. The words hung heavily in the courtroom, echoing through the hearts and minds of the townspeople. The gasps and quiet sobs that followed painted a somber picture of the impact this verdict had on the community. Dr. Mitchell, who had been a pillar of the town's medical establishment, appeared stoic yet deeply affected. The gavel's solemn strike solidified the verdict, marking the end of a chapter in the trial that had cast a pall of sorrow over Oakville. Dr. Mitchell's medical license was revoked, his once stellar reputation tarnished forever, and his life irrevocably altered. The townspeople, many of whom had placed their trust in Dr. Mitchell for years, found themselves at a crossroads. They had witnessed the power of the courtroom, and the verdict served as a stark reminder that justice, though a necessary force, did not always bring solace to the hearts filled with sorrow. As Chapter 6 came to a close, the Oakville community was left to grapple with the profound implications of the verdict. The trial had illuminated the fragility of trust and the irrevocable consequences of medical errors. Oakville's familiar streets and picturesque landscapes had been forever altered, as the town sought to navigate a path towards healing and understanding in the wake of a tragedy that had shaken their very foundations.
Chapter 7: The Fallout. The fallout from the verdict reverberated throughout the town of Oakville, leaving an indelible mark on the community. Dr. John Mitchell, once a respected healer, now found himself stripped of his medical license and burdened with a tarnished reputation. His fall from grace served as a stark reminder that the consequences of the trial extended far beyond the courtroom. In the days following the verdict, the townspeople were left in a state of collective shock and introspection. The man they had once trusted with their lives, the doctor who had been a pillar of the community, was now a symbol of potential negligence. The profound impact of the trial weighed heavily on their hearts, forcing them to confront their own vulnerabilities. For Emily, the young woman who had bravely testified about the loss of her sight, the verdict brought a bittersweet sense of relief. She had found validation for her suffering, and her voice had played a pivotal role in holding Dr. Mitchell accountable. However, her sight could not be restored, and the scars of her ordeal remained. The fallout extended beyond the principal characters of the trial. The townspeople grappled with their own inner demons, realizing that the people they had trusted implicitly were not infallible. The trial had shattered the illusion of invincibility that had surrounded Dr. Mitchell and the medical profession as a whole. The community was left with a profound sense of vulnerability and uncertainty, as they recognized that their lives were, to a certain extent, in the hands of those they relied on for their well-being. The fallout extended to the wider community, sparking discussions about medical accountability, the need for increased transparency in healthcare, and the importance of rigorous standards to prevent such tragedies in the future. The trial of Dr. John Mitchell had become a catalyst for change and reform, as the townspeople sought to ensure that similar incidents would not occur again. In Chapter 7, Oakville stood at a crossroads, its identity forever altered by the trial's fallout. The verdict had unearthed deep-seated questions about trust, accountability, and the fragility of human life. The community was left to grapple with the aftermath of a tragedy that had challenged the very essence of their beliefs and their understanding of justice, as they strove to find a way to heal and rebuild.
Chapter 8: Redemption and Reflection. In the aftermath of the tumultuous trial that had shattered the tranquility of Oakville, Chapter 8 emerged as a testament to the resilience and capacity for change within the human spirit. Attorney Sarah Anderson, who had played a pivotal role in prosecuting Dr. John Mitchell, chose to channel her passion for justice into a different avenue. She embarked on a mission to enact change and prevent further medical tragedies. With unwavering determination, Sarah started a campaign for stricter medical regulations and increased transparency in healthcare. Her efforts were aimed at ensuring that the mistakes that had come to light in the trial would not be repeated. Her campaign was met with support from the townsfolk, who recognized the importance of preventing such devastating incidents in the future. Dr. John Mitchell, behind bars and stripped of his medical license, sought his own path to redemption. He volunteered his extensive medical knowledge to help inmates within the prison system. While it was a small measure of redemption in the eyes of the law, it served as a way for him to atone for his past actions and to make a positive impact on the lives of others, even from behind prison walls. For Oakville, the trial had left an enduring mark. The community, forever changed, had learned the hard way that justice in the courtroom did not always bring solace to hearts filled with sorrow. The tragedy of the gavel's grief served as a stark reminder that life, even in the most familiar places, could crumble in the face of mistakes and misjudgment. It was a lesson that the townspeople would carry with them, a constant reminder of the fragility of trust, the complexity of accountability, and the resilience of the human spirit. Chapter 8 represented a turning point, where the community sought to heal, learn, and build a future that was more secure and just. It was a testament to the enduring spirit of Oakville, a community that had weathered a profound storm and emerged stronger, wiser, and committed to safeguarding the well-being of its residents in the years to come.